Hey friends, welcome to our Data Talk, a weekly show where we talk with data science leaders from around the world. Today we're talking to Leandro Gueja. He's the head of data science for Experian EMEA. Leandro, super excited to have you on the show today.
Well, really thank you for the invitation, Mike. I was just waiting for my time to speak with you. I have been following that. So really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, Leandro, can you just kind of share your background and how you got started and interested in data science?
Yes, definitely. Well, it kind of happened without an actual plan to do because I have a bachelor degree in electrical engineering. During the university, I did some research in neural networks, but more related to, let's say, to my field of expertise. And then this sparked for a while. I had the intention or the dream to become an investment broker. I tried to follow with that, but then we got the crisis, the one of the debt that we have in 2011, 2010. Then I was quite young, recent graduated, and then I left and I saw the opportunity in Serasa Experian in our office in Brazil. I said, well, let's try to do so. It was not any specifically position for the data science world, let's put that way, or for analytics. It was part of a management trainee program where I have filled in. I succeed, I pass it. And then during the job rotation, I find out about analytics. I saw that, well, this has a very good correlation to the mathematical background that I have, to the research that I used to do while in college. I said, well, that's a perfect fit. And here I
am. Wait, so take me back to your college days, electrical engineering. So that's a very hard major, a lot of math, a lot of work. So when you went from high school into college and you chose this very difficult mathematical major, was your original vision to be in engineering?
Kind of. Let's say that while I was a child, I was kind of good of fixing stuff. And then I got my first computer when I was, I think, 10 or 11, all for my own. And I said, wow. And then I started learning programming. And then you become the computer boy because you are the one in your family, the cousin that knows how to fix things. And then, I don't know, that thing got into my life. And then when I was finishing the high school, I said, well, what is the good correlation that I can do in my life with the things that I kind of already know? I was not so good in sports and things. And said, well, there would be computer science or we would have engineering. And then after hearing some advices from people that they were already engineers, and also from my family, I saw that engineering, would be able to give me an umbrella that I will be learning several things across the college time that in the end of the day, they are really helpful for problem solving. And this is one of the most required things that we have in our world, despite the profession that you have. You need to be able to solve problems. There are several ways to solve a problem. And let's say programming, mathematical skills, and they are just a piece of that. So that was also a very good fit during my lifetime.
So when you were kind of weighing the different options of, should I go into computer science or engineering? I don't know if those are the two that you were looking at. You were like, well, engineering will give me more breadth, like hands-on work, doing different things with electronics and technology and programming. Computer science is more like the languages and learning how to program, but I want to do a little bit more than that. Was that kind of your thinking?
Yes. It depends on the university. Let's say the grade that you're gonna follow, but at least in the university that I went, so the electrical engineering course is specifically saying it was offering programming languages classes, lots of mathematics, physics, and statistics as well. And all the part, because I also have, let's say, specialization in telecommunications. And in order to design something related to telecommunications in engineering, signals, they are pretty much stochastical processes. They are pretty much about statistics. So all my statistical background comes from this area as well.
And okay, so you finish all that academic work, and did you go right into Experian, or how'd that transition happen?
No, not really. I had the wish to go to the financial markets, especially because in Brazil, engineers, they are, let's say, very requested in this kind of area because of such backgrounds. And I think this is a trend in the world. So I said, well, I'll give it a try. And then I did. The idea of joining Experian, honestly speaking, came after seeing that, well, the career in the financial markets, it might be hard for somebody that is just a recent graduated that I was. And I was just married as well. I married kind of soon for my generation. And then the thing said, okay, I need to find out something else. And then it was when I discovered Experian.
And I think what's cool, you mentioned that you're sort of like in a rotational program. That gave you kind of a overview of different business units there in Brazil. Is that right?
Yes. In reality, I think this is one of the biggest assets that I have until today while I work in Experian, because we spend about a year every month changing the place that we were in the company. So I went through IT, I went through finance, I went through HR, I went through sales, so several departments inside the company, learning a bit about everything. I mean, many of the connections that I still have nowadays, after 8 years since I joined Experian, they are a reflection from those periods. And especially the person that nowadays it's my leader, I met because one of those rotations that I did, and this was one of the factors that I had in my favor when I moved country, when I moved to Brazil, from Brazil to Italy.
I think it's that type of role that you had, where Experian let you be in these different business lines and kind of get to know the teams, get to know more of the business. That is like super valuable. Now, at the end of that rotation, you then had to choose one particular area that you wanted to focus on. How did that look for you?
Yes, there was the possibility of happening two things. One, you might be chosen, or you could choose.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes. So in my case, it was the perfect match, because the place that I chose to work for, that was analytics, it was also one of the places that I said, well, that guy looked nice. Let's start with him. And I said, okay. Yeah. And then we were happy for the end of our lives. So a good one. And as I mentioned to you, when I found myself there, so the things that they were doing, and particularly when the time that I was doing the job rotation in analytics, they were starting in Brazil the work with unstructured data. I got so fascinated about that thing, and it was kind of in the beginning of the big data era. Everybody started speaking about big data, sexiest job from the century, and things like that. And I said, well, I am on the right place on the right time, so I will park here.
Now, I'm kind of curious, as you have navigated your career, you mentioned the huge value it was to get experiences in these different business lines, because it gave you a huge perspective on what Experian does. You got to know different teams. Do you now, in your current role, now that you're more niche and very focused on a particular area, do you still like keep in touch with and kind of keep an eye on what's happening across the different businesses?
Yes, let's say that this is a heritage that I had from those job rotation times, and in reality, this is even advice that I give to people. Try to learn as much as you can from other parts of your company, because especially being a data scientist, sometimes you think that you're going to be just playing with data, trying to fit the best possible model, but those things, they don't make sense if you don't know why you are doing that. And then by the point in time that you know the business needs, so your job starts to make much more sense. And then you start connecting the dots and saying, okay, the thing that I'm doing data science is not just going to be a probability of something happening, but it's going to be a probability of something happening that I will give so business sense to that I'm gonna support my company to make money, the clients of my company to make money, and even the society is gonna be beneficial from it, because they are gonna to see all the good things that Experian can do, particularly speaking about data.
Tell me about your rise in leadership as you came on board to Experian. You did these different rotations, got a chance to meet all these amazing people at Experian, and you finally figured out, okay, this is the team I want to be on. This is the kind of work that I want to be doing. You move into this role and you begin to rise up the ranks. You start to move into different positions, management roles and leading teams. And talk about that kind of transition, because that can be very, very difficult when you're like obviously you're doing the work all the time, but at the same time, you're now responsible for kind of like raising up other leaders, mentoring others. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yes, and this is a quite interesting stuff, because when I decided to join analytics, especially the team that I was, there were people there much more skilled than I was. Although I had all this mathematical background, they were on the job. I was not. I was coming from a management program. So even myself, I tried to say, okay, let's go back for a while. Let's understand what they are doing, especially because we need to keep the conversations together and need to give directions. And then I start learning as well. So they were really, really awesome. They taught me a lot of things. I also was pushing myself sometimes after hours in order to learn things that I didn't learn by that time. And then trying to, let's say, to equalize the knowledge. And then once that I achieved that thing, it was possible to, because again of the connections that I did, of the understanding that I had in the company, is starting to give direction and say, look, this thing that you are doing is just brilliant. But if you do this because that business area needs that, it's going to be much better. And then you're starting to position yourself as a leader, because you start to say, look, let's do this together. Now I have learned, so we can do it together. So my early days of leadership, they were really hands-on in coding as well. It's something that nowadays I don't do so much. I think this is a natural shift that we do during the career, but still I need to keep myself updated for everything that is happening, even if I'm not coding, because in the end of the day, when I go to a client meeting, there is going to be this technical guy from the client side that he's going to ask questions. He or she is going to ask questions, and then you need to be able to answer them, because they are expecting this from you. And also your teams is expecting this from you. So I think this is something that you need to keep learning.
How do you, I mean, things are changing so quickly. New tools are being developed. There's always changes happening with code and technology. How do you keep up?
Well, I have particular two ways of doing that. I like to read a lot, so I always trying to really actively searching for news in this area. Because of my academic background, I like to read papers. And there are plenty of sources in order to get up to date to the newest papers that we have in the academia world. And also in our company, we have the Experian data labs. So my position allows me to be close to them. And as they do purely research and development in order to support the next generation of solutions, I have this, let's say, privilege to also get new things from the things that they are doing. So these are my ways in order to keep up to date or keep up to speed to everything that is happening in the market. And there is one particular thing that we cannot forget never, that is clients' feedback. Because part of the problem your clients are asking you to help them to solve, they might be correlated to something that is really, really new. And then this gives you the opportunity to have an idea or trying to connect something that you saw before. So in my view, those are the best ways to keep up to date.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because sometimes a client might mention something, a business problem, and you have, let's just say in this situation, you have just read a paper or something about a new technology that was developed that could possibly help with the solution that the client has. So the client mentioned something and you're like, you know what, let me share with you this new technology that's just being developed that could possibly be a solution. You share that, and client's like, that sounds great. If you guys can help us with that, that would be wonderful. So then you get to the work, and you start to actually figure out, is this going to be a solution? Part of that is what we call like innovation, right? It's coming up with something new that hasn't been done before to help solve a problem. But with innovation comes the difficulty that it might not work. And you don't really always have the case study to say, I have enough proof, enough data points to say this is going to work. And I'm kind of curious, like your process in innovation, trying to help a client, realizing this is kind of unknown territory. I don't have the data points to say, yes, do it this way.
I think this has been working in a very good way because of some things. The first one, it's trust. When you do a very good job with your client, they don't become only your client, they become your partner. They are really trusting you. And then when you come up with something new, with an idea, as you mentioned, they're going to trust you because they say, well, we have worked so well so far. This is my new idea. We don't know the outcomes. We have no proven track of that. But let's give it a try because we know that that company, Experian, works quite well. So this is the initial point. Once we get there and we have this trust, then we can really start building up things. One very nice example, it was, I think, about 5 years ago, we were working in this new solution. It's called Voice of Customer, that it's basically working with unstructured data with text information. We were analyzing logs of contact center. They were quite predictive for the things that we would like to do. But then they might be biased because we are going to be analyzing only what the people they were typing down. And then we had an idea. Well, what if you will look to the conversation between the contact center agent and the customer? Because there we have no bias because it's a direct conversation, no skips, nothing. This was an idea. We told this for our client. They said, well, it looks like an idea. I will give you a sample of that. Please let me see what we came out of that. We prove our hypothesis that I think was more valuable than just having the biased text. And then a couple of years later, this has become one of the greatest solutions Experian has nowadays.
Oh, wow. That is so cool.
No, it's really, really nice, really nice. And this has been happening a lot, not only with me. I have heard of similar things across other departments as well. So I think this is a very good way of doing innovation because our clients, they know the pain, they know where they need to improve. So let's listen to them. And then again, having the trust from their side, you can do amazing things.
I love that you're focused on the trust and the relationship with the client and making sure that they're being served the best, that you're keeping them in the loop during the whole process. I think that's a beautiful way to innovate because they know that you have their best interest in mind. Can you talk about failure in the innovation process? Because part of developing awesome things means that you're also going to work on things that don't work out. And how do you kind of navigate the failure with the client?
Well, there is one positive side of failing that it's regarding that you learn that path you shouldn't follow anymore. And I think this is the key piece to get through that when you do this with a client, because yes, this is going to happen. But if you are transparent with your client, showing the steps that you are doing, they will recognize as soon as you do that, well, that thing is not going well enough or not in the way it was expected from both sides. And then we can correct the course and then try to find another way. And then this memory will be there. And then we will know that next time, let's not gonna follow that path because it's not a good thing to do. Let's put in a simple way. So because of this trust and because you are transparent, you can easily navigate through failures. This, in my view, it's the best thing that we can do. It's a consequence of having trust from our clients, and also trusting them because their judgment, and say, look, stop by now, park for a while, try a different thing. And I think this is the one of the biggest lessons that I had from failure.
I think what I love about your process is that you have included your client like all throughout the process. You're being completely transparent about everything, so that when the discovery is made that something is going right or something is going wrong, you're both addressing it together. And that, I think, lends to even building more trust. So even with failure that might come your way, it's another way to build more trust. Like, look, here's what we're discovering.
Indeed, it works like the agile method. So you do a first run, and then you see that works. Then you go for the second run, like the second MVP, and so on. Being transparent, it's the key, because these avoid lots of miscommunications that you may have. In the end of the day, you avoid lots of stress that sometimes they happen because the deadlines, they are strict. Well, we know how business works. So if there is one way that nowadays I think it's the best one, it's communication, for sure.
When you get out of school and you've done, a lot of times when you're in college, like you're so focused on the textbooks and working on your thesis papers, and you can go through college really by yourself. You can just be focused on your schooling, do your testing, and then you get into the job environment. And to do data science well, it requires you not only to be good by yourself in front of a computer and doing the work you need to do, but it also requires you, to your point about communication and working with others, helping to find business problems, which means that you're talking to other teams, that you're not just doing the coding, that you really have to, to really make an impact, you need to be talking with clients, you need to be talking with your team members. And I'm kind of curious about how you kind of, I think anybody who's going to be successful in data science, they have to be a good communicator. Mm-hmm. And can you kind of talk about your process? How did you kind of grow in that?
Well, you need to keep in mind that your colleague inside the company is not your competitor. He's your colleague, he's your partner. So when you open some idea that you might be having, instead of you just go there in your computer and then start typing to see if you get the best model possible, share the idea with the guy, because for sure he has lived something that you don't. And then when you combine both experiences, you very likely is going to come out with something much better. Yes, sometimes you still need to do a kind of solo job, because at least you need to prepare yourself, you need to read something, you need to be up to date, fine. But again, trying to speak with somebody that you know might be the best route for this kind of things.
Can you talk about your transition from Brazil to Italy? Fascinating that you have moved to different countries and have practiced data science in two different countries. And I'm kind of curious about that transition, and also, has the way you worked on data science teams changed when you were in Brazil to where you are now in Italy?
Well, it was quite interesting. I had a motto that I remembered from myself. I don't know, since I remember of myself, that it's the idea that the world is too small for you to be in just one single place for the rest of your life. That's fine. For some people, this might work. For others, don't. And I think this was my case. I always was trying to find a new way, new things to do, and etc. Because of my because I have been in analytics, I had the opportunity to attend one of Experian conference, the Future of Information conference in Costa Mesa. And then in the first year I met the person that today is my leader, that it's Enrico. And then we become friends from there. One day, he gave me a call saying, look, Leandro, I heard about the things that you are doing in Brazil. Could you share the knowledge with us? And then by that time, I was already thinking changing country. I said, well, maybe we can do better. What if I go there? And I think this would be a good thing. I was already wondering that. And then for sure, by that time, we talked together about this possibility. Then I talked to the leader in Brazil. Julio was quite supportive to the idea. And then we set up the transition from one country to another. My wife has the Italian citizenship, so this helps a lot.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Exactly. So it was a very good catch. And then they said, well, you're going to move to Rome. I said, oh, come on. The city is amazing. So I'm really, really lucky. And we got the opportunity that I had. It was exactly to bring to the region all the experience that I had while developing the data science work in Brazil. We started to apply it in EMEA as well. And particularly speaking, by the time I joined it, there was one different thing between the regions is that here, the data science has much more direct contact with the sales colleagues, with the client, which is quite good. I think nowadays this is something that it's kind of general across our company, but it was pretty new to me. This has made my growth exponential because I was exposed to one side that I use it to talk with clients, but not exactly in the same direct way. And I found that thing just lovely because as I mentioned, the velocity that I started learning new things was pretty much amazing. And then I was able to not just take the experience that I had, but also starting doing different projects. And then again, raising a new team here in the region.
So tell me about going into a new region, a new business, a new not new business, but a new team, and having to kind of start over again, right? You've already established your credibility. You've already built a lot of trust at the Experian office in Sarasa. And then you're now needing to kind of do that again.
Well, let's say it's quite interesting, especially because you are, well, and Europe is amazing because when I was in Brazil, sometimes I was speaking with people from other regions, but mainly you are speaking with people from your country. Like I pretty much believe is the same in the US. But coming to EMEA, well, we are more than 10 countries. So you're not just speaking with one different culture, but you're speaking with more than 10 different cultures. So I think this was the biggest thing because you need to understand how people think. They are just different from you. So you need to understand how is their reaction to things. So this kind of adaptation, it's quite interesting because you need to stay focused all the time, especially because I was speaking 3 languages at the same time. So English with the other colleagues outside Italy, Italian with the Italian office, and then back home and with my family, Portuguese. So, you know, the amount of not stress, but the brain was really full because I said, oh my God, not my job, but I need to speak in 3 different languages.
Yeah.
Amazing. And nowadays I can switch from one language to another quite easily. And that I even don't recall myself that this being a problem. And sometimes when the other people see it, they say, wow, I was just speaking one language, now you're speaking another. So I think this is the most fascinating thing that I had to adapt myself. Sometimes I mix vocabularies. I'm kind of creating a new one, but I think it's going to be temporary.
That is awesome. No, I love it just shows like how flexible you are, and you're like, you want to learn, you want to adapt. You just kind of you just went for it. You just like, oh, there's this opportunity in Italy. It's a chance to kind of experience a new culture. I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to grow a lot. And then you just do it. And that meant leaving the comfort, right, of being in Sao Paulo and leaving a team and leaving people that you've already established trust. And it's very comfortable to stay there because you're like, well, I can continue to grow and it'll be easier. And then you left it and to do something that was going to make you grow even more. And that takes a lot of courage, to do something like that.
Yes. And I think you need to be really aware of your motivations. Because of the challenge that you face, it's quite easy for you to say, oh, you know what, I think I took the wrong decision. So if you're not clear about the reasons that made you to do this change, you are going to be through a very complicated period of your life, because it's not easy. In the end of the day, I was the foreigner. So from very small things like go to a supermarket and then read a cleaning product and then understand how this works, to your job in your company, everything changed. So, but I was pretty much clear about the reasons that I was moving, because I would like to see the world. I would like to see new experience. So I was preparing myself for quite a long time that, well, it's not going to be easy. Nobody said this was easy. And but in the end of the day, I have still my friends back then in Brazil. I have made plenty of new friends. Whenever I go to a client meeting in another country, I'm meeting somebody, tasting good food, doing different things. So it's pretty amazing, quite nice.
So I love your growth mindset and just trying new things and being open. I think that's such a valuable trait to have. As you were being brought on to, basically take the things that you had learned and been successful at in data science for Experian in Sao Paulo, and then going over to a new team and actually build a team and lead a data science team. What was that process for you as you began to discuss data science, like the way to practice data science, taking the things you learned in Sao Paulo and then going into Italy? What was that transition like?
You need to understand what kind of problem you are trying to solve, because in the end of the day, I think this is the key point that people really need. And I'm saying this because you may have several, let's say, several kind of experience from previous jobs or from a previous role, but in the end of the day, they are not going to fit exactly in the same way. So the legislation might be different. The kind of, even the kind of data might be different, although everything is data. So you need to plan yourself to see, okay, how that thing that I know is going to adapt to the new request that I had. One of the very first projects that I did when joining EMEA, it was related to the possibility to work with transactional data. This was pretty amazing because this kind of job in Experian started in the data labs. And because I knew the people from the data labs, and then I saw the client request, I said, well, I think we can apply that thing. It was one of the, not the first, but at least I think the second or the third commercial application from a pure research that was done in the labs, that I had the opportunity myself to put this in the place. But again, it's the ability to understand the, let's say, the tool set that you have and how that tool set is going to fit to the problem that you are trying to solve. This may sound a little bit generic, but it's not. If you feel the principle, if you understand the principle that several things, there are several problems, you will start to pick up the right tool to solve the right problem. And if you don't have the tool, you might know the person that has the tool. And this is going to make all the difference.
I mean, the way you talk about it is like these puzzle pieces, and you're trying to find what you currently know and then what the problems are, and you're trying to find the right piece to fit. And if you don't have the right piece, who can you talk to figure out how to get that piece developed?
In my opinion, it's pretty much like that. I cannot think that I know everything or that I will know everything, or even somebody else may know everything, because we don't. So, and especially when working in companies like ours, so we have the possibility to just send an email to several brilliant people in order to get their opinion. Why the hell I'm going to do that job by my own? I could be doing a much better job, much faster job if I just communicate. So that's why I see it that way, because people, they have different skill sets, and it's like doing a model. So you may know a programming language. Sometimes you need to migrate to another language because you have one specific task. And then you go back from the thing that you know. And eventually one model is not going to fit because the kind of data you have. So you need to just, okay, what else I can do? You may try a different technique and then see, look, this works. I think doing an analogy, it works in the same way.
Yeah, that is awesome. Oh, I got to ask you, because when you're talking about different, I didn't even think about the different languages you have to navigate between. Because even with data sets you're working with different languages. What is that like?
A mess.
Because I'm like, I only speak English. And I barely speak English.
Data.
And I barely speak English correctly. I can't even imagine working with data in different languages.
Well,
and you have to just like go through all that.
Let's say that I may have an advantage because I know. Let's say that I know English a bit, and then I know a Latin language where the roots is going to help me to understand Italian, Spanish, a bit of French. So I think this makes things a little bit easier. But again, the teamwork going to make the difference, because I have a central function in EMEA, but I really count with the support of my analytics colleagues in the countries. Because if I may have a problem with the language, and not only the language, but also to develop everything, for sure they're going to be there supportive to our cause.
So throughout this conversation, you've mentioned unstructured data a couple of times, and I want to ask you about that. What excites you about unstructured data? Because that can be like so challenging and puzzling to deal with data that you're not sure how to fit it into categories.
What I think it's fascinating is because you may look to the unstructured data, you may not see an obvious pattern, but there are patterns. So this possibility of discovery that for sure you may have on the structured data as well, but it's much more challenging in the structured way, because you need to apply, in my view, every single piece of the tool set of data science. So you will need to know how to do a very good data preparation. Let's say that you are speaking about the text data that I was mentioning before. So it's not just a matter of having a large TXT file. So how do you make that thing become something useful, not just a bunch of words? So you need to start doing even a comprehension of grammar, because you need to remember from your early days in school what is a noun, what is an adjective, what comes first, what comes next, in order to start doing or start ordering things. Then you need to be a good programmer in order to design the right algorithm to transform that thing. And what is the outcome? It's passing from the structure to a more structured way. And then you need to apply the things that you know. So you need to do all the data preparation phase, feature engineering, then go to the model development, then try to understand if the things that you are done, they have no bias, they are not overfitted, all the regular steps that you need to do when developing a good model. So the structured data covers pretty much everything. So from the very early stage of understanding what a word means until that word in the end of the day may be a part of a probability of, I don't know, of a client buying something, or the risk of credit, who knows, depending on the problem that you are trying to solve. I think that's why it's so fascinating. When working with the structured data, you may understand that the amount of adjectives that you have in a conversation, they might be really meaning something. Not just a person that is happy, but who knows if that person might be lying, trying to fake the situation, making the situation become more real, and then starting doing this kind of qualification. So you need to think out of the box and understand the message that the data is giving you. So that's why I think it's pretty much amazing. And nowadays, not only text, but you have the possibility to work with audio files. More recently, it's growing the idea of using images. So I think there is, and as we know, the cliche, the word is much more about unstructured data than structured data. So I think the real value of all this new avalanche of data, it's coming from you be able to understand how to structure or to better extract meaning from the structured data.
Can you share maybe a story? Because I think that these challenges they're fascinating. You're given a data set, and you're told to begin to look at it and examine it and make sense of it. And I wonder if you can kind of share a story of how you have gone through something that was very unstructured and then made it insightful. Because that, I'm very curious on that journey for you and what that kind of looked like. Because I got to imagine you must be so happy when you get the insights out of this like data set that you're like, how am I ever going to come up with something out of this?
Yeah, it's like your eureka moment. You just came up with that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it works. It's something fascinating about data at all, even if it's structured. When you get out with some result that you say, well, that thing makes sense. Sometimes you even doubt yourself. I said, really, does it? And you just go to take a deeper look, and then sometimes you may find a error in the algorithm, and then I said, okay, I was just lucky, but most of the time they're really meaning something. So the process comes from, I like to give this example with text, because it covers pretty much everything that we do. It's, I don't know, after the speaking, it's one of our biggest ways of communication. So if you are dealing, let's say, trying to understand if a consumer is happy with the post-sale processes of a company, how you're going to find out that? For example, how you're going to deal with irony? Because sometimes, especially if you're working some written feedbacks, it's quite complicated. What is fascinating is when analyzing the patterns, you need to have not just the data-driven side of your exploration, but your feeling, your judgment. That's why knowing the business is quite important, and that's why data science is so fascinating, because it puts together or requires that I will have different skill sets or different kind of interpretations from the same thing in order to connect the dots. So when dealing with irony, that's pretty much complicated. There are plenty of development that's still going on, but you can find already some good algorithms that may do some kind of the differentiation depending on the order things are appearing in a text, or depending if you're analyzing a conversation between two people, if one has interrupted the other, this also has a meaning. So getting those kind of insights and in doing the interpretation of what they mean, it's the beauty of the process. And that's why you need to be really careful from the beginning in not just putting something that is going to process the data came out with a bunch of numbers. You need to cover all the steps. You don't need just to take a pre-configured framework to process data if you don't know what is happening there, because you need to look, because you need to give the direction that it's relevant for the business, rather than looking to a chart that might be statistically significant, but then in the end of the day, it means what? You don't know, and if you don't know how to explain, especially nowadays, as regulators are becoming more strict, and in order to, okay, you want to play with data, you can play with data, but you need to tell me what you're doing, you need to explain me that you are doing. So I think this is quite relevant to keep in mind.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, I was thinking about one of the tools that I use is social media monitoring tools, right? And so all this social media data around whatever keywords I'm tracking is coming in, and these tools are beginning to they're trying to sort the data as like, this is positive sentiment around this particular word, this is negative sentiment, but it's never quite right. And because you just mentioned irony, and that's one of the difficulties that we have on the social media monitoring side, is especially when you're looking at global languages, like what's irony, what's sarcasm in different cultures. And then layered on top of that are little things like, well, this is all in title case, everything is capitalized, so there might be upset, right? And then there's emojis that might be used. There might be a photo or a video relating to a meme that you may not even be aware of, that is then making that statement, more of a humorous statement, not a, negative or positive statement. So there's like all these like nuances with language that you're speaking about, where it can be very, very difficult for models to be able to explain them without even, you have to actually look at them and like understand some of the cultural mindset. Because even when I go through things and it's all in English, there might be a meme or image attached to that statement. And if I don't understand the meme, I'm not even going to get the statement, because I'm not even aware of that meme culture.
Indeed, and that reminds me from one thing that you need also to learn how to not use a tool. As you said, dealing, for example, with irony, just taking up this example because it's one of the most complex, so I think it's a good one. So sometimes it might be so fuzzy that it's better to, okay, let's not gonna use that. Let's try to find something else. Because if you are in doubt, if you're not consistent with your approach, you can keep doing as research, but then in order to keep the problem, in order to be solved, what else can you do? So maybe because we're just looking to one specific thing, you are missing other signs from the data that also gives you a good predictivity as this identification of irony, for example, may be given, and then you know how to deal fast with that problem. And then for sure, for the beauty of the research, for the improvement that constantly we need to have, then you keep researching when you try to do so. This happens several times because you think that your idea is the best for that moment. Instead of being stuck there, try to think fast as well to say, look, I'm not going this, I'm going that way. And then it's going to have as good as result from the other side, but you are consistent here. So I think this is another good point to keep in mind when developing such kind of projects, especially with this kind of data.
Are there any new data sources that you're excited about as technology improves and obviously more and more data is going to become available to us?
Well, this thing, for example, smartwatches, I think they are pretty much amazing. When I look, I mean, sometimes I spend several minutes looking through my own data in an application. I say, oh my God, I'm not sleeping, or my bit rate is going down, and things like that. And so, of course, respecting what the consent of the consumer is going to be for the use of such data. But I think everything related to healthcare is going to be so much valuable, because it's not that you are solving a business problem, but you might be saving lives. So I think this is an entire new area and a new era for the data science going on this healthcare direction that I think, well, the entire world is going to use that in a very good way to better assist people. We may have heard about several applications or algorithms that they are supporting to monitor people with diabetes problem, with heart problems and things like that. So what else can we do? Of course, we will never have an intention to replace any kind of professional. A physician is always going to be needed. You need to see your doctor. However, I believe data science is going to give you a fast way to look for such professionals. Say, look, I have identified that I might have a problem, so go to your doctor because you are using a kind of device. So I think this is one data that I really like to develop a project in the future.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited about all the possibilities and how data can help improve our healthcare. It's super exciting time to be in right now. I think my last question, and this is a question, Leandro, that we get a lot of times in our data science community on Facebook. They're wondering about, how do I get my first job in data science? And a lot of students right now, they're going to be graduating in June, looking for their first job. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be interviewing with people like you, and you're going to be asking them questions around their hard skills, their soft skills. And a lot of people right now are just asking that question in our community: how do I get my first job? What should I say in my interview to stand out? And I'm wondering, what will be your message to these graduates?
The first message is show that you know how to do something useful. Sometimes we look for the hardest way of solving problems. just to try to prove ourselves or to prove somebody else that we know things. But in the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as the problem is solved in a good way. Please don't take me wrong here. So what I'm meaning is, sometimes people, they start to do so obsessive because I need to know all the best algorithm combination possible. I need to work with deep learning, trained in GPUs in the cloud. But you know what? Maybe a simple logistic regression will do the same job much more efficient because you are using less computational power, you are achieving a much faster result. So having such things in mind, that find that you know how to program deep learning algorithms, but you need also to know how to apply them and where to apply them. So when you are getting out to the market in order to try to find your first job, so one is it. The second thing is going to be try to build a portfolio, even if it's a demo portfolio from Kaggle competitions, from a blog that you have, or from any other kind of small project that you did. But try to document that, because particularly myself, if I got 2 CVs, for sure, the academic formation, it's relevant. You know, it is. But if one of the guys has a proven track that he knows how to do things, myself as a business leader, I will see, look, the learning curve of this guy is going to be much faster than this one. He knows already how to do things. I need to deliver a project in 4 months. Who I'm going to pick up? So the guy that has proven that, well, I already know. And you don't need to be an expert, because you might be learning on the job. As long as you are smart, you have a logical mind, and you know, one thing that I really appreciate when doing a job interview, it's how people react to the fact of connecting things. So the thing that I have been repeating during our conversation is, do you know how to plug things together? Do you know how to bring one thing to the another? Because in the end of the day, this is what you're going to be doing with people spamming you with plenty of emails, phone calls, and etc. So you need to be fast, but keeping focus on what you are gonna solve. I think those are the best advices. So, and then people sometimes they get even in another kind of discussion, that is, what is the best programming language? What is the best tool? It doesn't matter if you know the foundations. If you know, for example, how to program in Python, and one of your jobs that you're applying requires R, you have the foundation, you have logical programming way of thinking. So it's just a matter of adapting the syntax, maybe knowing a couple of functions that one language has and the other does not. But in my view, this is most important. So rather than start discussing which language is the better and becoming an evangelist, try to know the principles of things, and then you are going to be a very flexible professional. And in my view, this is what companies are looking for.
I think that's awesome. It's a way to find somebody who's driven, curious, and gritty. I think that those are the signs you're looking for, and I think that's a great way to approach it. I was going to share with you, Marcelo, who's at the Data Lab in Sarasa. He was talking about how when he interviews people, he would, or maybe he would ask a question intentionally that would be very difficult to solve. Like, you couldn't solve it unless you Googled it very quickly. And he's actually waiting for the moment where the person would just bring out their phone and Google the answer, because that's being gritty and finding the shortcut. And I love that.
Well, he did. Well, you know, that's a very good thing, because you are finding a way to solve your problem. So you don't need to be ashamed if you don't know. You're going to learn. So that's quite nice. I like it. Maybe I'll do this for my next one.
You know,
thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I love that, because it just feels like, you know, he's asking the question to the point where they don't know, and then like, will they? You know, I want to see them Google it. Like, just get the answer, because it's there in your pocket, right? Yeah. It's there. You can get it.
Just a second.
Yeah. I love that. Last questions. Thank you so much for doing this, Leandro. Advice for executive team on managing a successful data science team. because you're there as a leader, you're driving the business, you need a lot of freedom. You need to be able to do the things you need to do. And I'm kind of curious, like, what would be your message to those leaders in an organization that are trying to build up a successful data science team from the ground up?
Well, I think they could be failure tolerant, because as we were mentioning, you are going to fail. Failure is part of the process. You're not going to fail most of the time, but when you do, you need to really quickly recover. So if you is stuck that, well, maybe I'm not going to invest in that much because they have so many failures, you're going to miss a very awesome thing in the end of the day. So listen to those data guys, that put that way, but also give the opportunity for them to know the client. Because in the end of the day, knowing a bunch of algorithms, it's useless if you don't know what your client is asking for. So expose in a meeting or in a conference call, at least just to listen what the client is saying, I think is something really, really relevant for them.
I think that's spot on. That's brilliant. I think that is super, super important, and probably not done enough, but super important. Leandro, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. It is a blast chatting with you. I hope we can chat again soon. I'd love to keep up with the work you're doing. So just give me a shout anytime you're available. And thank you so much for being on our show this week.
No, thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks a lot. It was my pleasure speaking with you. And let's keep in touch. See you soon.
For sure.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.